Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your relevant host, Shorty. And I'm dipping back into the world of Aftershock Comics today, a company which can do some excellent things, but they can also disappoint. Sometimes they will do an issue one which has nothing but promise and is then just not maintained. Other times they do stuff which is absolutely out there and so much fun that you just kind of have to keep reading it to see where it's going. This doesn't manage to be either of those things. It also manages to change my mind from the start of reading a comic book to the end, and even when I'd finished it, there was still more to be thinking about, and that's a good thing. Issue ones are a difficult thing to manage and do right. You want to grab people, you want them to be absolutely convinced that what they're going to carry on reading is worthwhile, but you also don't want to just put it all out there on Front Street. You want to leave people guessing. And you also want artwork that is captivating. Now, there is some issues with the artwork in this one, but overall it does the job quite nicely, in such a way that was kind of reminiscent of the Many Deaths of Layla Starr, which is a reasonably good comparison. The artwork is non-photorealistic, it's stylized, there's some fantastic cityscapes, really good character design, but unlike the Many Deaths of Layla Starr, there is far too much negative space for me. Sometimes this is just a panel fading off into the distance with just a color palette shift out there and no background to it. Sometimes it's page layout where there is just not as many panels as you'd think, and there's room to put them in there or expand them. This is clearly like an artistic choice, and it was something that I noticed quite early on. I think on like page 3 or 4, there's just a little bit too much negative space, but by the end of it, I'm finding that negative space to be a useful part of the story. We are dealing with some kind of dystopic post-apocalyptic Johannesburg and other South African areas, and having that wasted area, that wasted space, felt like it was part of the story rather than just, I don't know, a decision in editing. It added something to it in the end. And that was one of the things that changed throughout. Secondly, we're going to talk about action sequences. Dynamism is really important to me. I think it's a tricky thing to do for comic book artists, but when they do it well, it's genuinely amazing. And I think some people just rely on kind of old school tricks for it by just putting in blurred or motion lines, and it's fine. It's not my cup of tea, and sometimes I feel like it's thoroughly necessary. There's a comic starts with a chase scene, what appears to be a mother and child running from some magical nature controlling wizard or something, and it looks brilliant. They are clearly in motion, tumbling through the undergrowth, heading towards a cliff, but the motion lines felt unnecessary. Like, you can see they are moving. Obviously, they're not moving. You get what I mean. Later on, there's another chase scene. Main character running away from 3 or 4 people who are clearly trying to kidnap her to sell her because she is an albino and witches will pay a lot of money for that. And instead of doing anything like motion line, they also completely reduce all the backdrop, all the scenery to blank space, but with just the word run done large in what I found really blue bubble letters, or not quite bubble, but yeah, just that. That is a far more effective way of showing their motion than actually motion lines, because it's far more interesting. It actually made me wonder what the choice was behind that, and I kind of liked the way I felt when I saw that. It was onomatopoeia for something which wasn't a sound effect, and I like that that is a thing they can do in comic books. There's also a really good action sequence at the end, involving, just after that, in fact, involving somebody on a speeder bike, which clearly is moving faster than everyone else, but other than a slight blur to the focus, didn't do anything else it didn't need to do. You got a sense of motion from what was going on. There's a bit where the character on it is kind of half jumping off, half attacking somebody on the ground level, and it just looks brilliant. It looks like it's a snapshot taken of motion rather than actual motion, but they do that really, really effectively. Story-wise, because we are dealing with a culture which would be foreign to an awful lot of people who read this comic book, they have a lot of fun using translated words from various South African dialects to give you a sense that this is a larger community rather than just like a homogenous group of people from one city or from one cultural group. It's a very effective way of doing it, and they drop in some stuff about mythology and larger cultural bits of the world. They don't do all of it in the comic book, though, because it's an Aftershock issue 1. You get roughly the same amount of art pages that you get in any comic book, but you get back matter as well, which explains a little bit more, but it's all in-world back matter, which is kind of nice. It's not just info dump drops, which is really cool. It also is quite expositional in the side of the comic book. And this is that, like, even after the comic book, I was still rethinking my thoughts on this one. Terrible sentence, that one. But when I got to the end, I thought they spent a lot of time just going over what's happening here. There is a spirit reading which sends the main character off on a mission, which takes a while and it's kind of cool. But then the next couple of pages is effectively reiterating that mission again with slightly different artwork as if they're getting ready to go out. There's an awful lot of just that kind of work going on there. But when I got to the end of it, I realized I wasn't particularly bothered by that, because although it explained a lot, it didn't over-explain anything. there was a lot left to answer. There's a lot of mythology I'm not too sure of. There's a lot of character motivations I have no idea. There's relationships I need to explore more. They left enough effectively behind the scenes that makes me want to carry on and see what happens with the next issue. Far better than I thought it was going to be, and I can see why it's already getting some quite decent buzz online. That's it for me today. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.